Captain Reed drummed his fingers on the control panel, staring at the large holographic display that filled the center of the mapping room. The three-dimensional star chart glowed with thousands of colored dots representing stars, planets, and space stations, all neatly labeled and categorized, all except for one section. "Computer, zoom in on Sector 87 Delta," Reed commanded. The map shifted, bringing into focus the edge of charted space. Beyond the last clearly mapped stars was a large area simply marked with red borders and the words "Human Space." No interior. No details. No star systems. Nothing but empty space on the map. Reed had been with the Galactic Mapping Guild for 20 years. He had helped chart the toxic gas clouds of the Mira Nebula and had personally mapped the treacherous asteroid fields around the black hole at the galaxy's center. There was no corner of known space that the Guild hadn't documented, except this one. "This makes no sense," Reed muttered. The door to the mapping room slid open, and Navigator Thomas walked in carrying 2 steaming cups. He handed one to Reed. "Still obsessing over the empty zone?" Thomas asked, taking a sip from his cup. 20% of our galactic map is incomplete," Reed replied, not taking his eyes off the display. "How can the Guild claim to be the authority on cosmic cartography when we've left such a massive blind spot?" Thomas shrugged. "Humans want privacy. The Council respects that." "Since when does the Council respect anything that gets in the way of progress?" Reed turned to face his navigator. "The humans are barely a century into faster-than-light travel. The Zrill have been crossing galaxies for 50,000 years. The Axoni were building space stations when humans were still figuring out how to make fire. What could they possibly have that needs this level of secrecy?" "Maybe they're hiding something," Thomas suggested, half-joking. Reed's communication band buzzed. "Captain Reed, report to Director Mock's office immediately." Reed sighed. Perfect timing. Director Mock's office was minimalist, with just a desk and a single chair for visitors. The walls displayed moving images of famous stellar phenomena the Guild had mapped over its 1,000-year history. "Captain Reed," Mock said without looking up from his desk terminal. The director was a tall, thin alien with gray skin and large, dark eyes that rarely blinked. "Your access logs show you've been reviewing the human space boundary data repeatedly over the past month." Reed stood straight. "Yes, Director. I've been studying the edge zones in preparation for the Outer Rim mapping project." "Your project is the Outer Rim," Mock said, his voice emotionless. "Human space is restricted. Not just to you. To everyone. With respect, Director, I don't understand why. Our mission is to create complete and accurate maps of." "Our mission," Mock interrupted, "is to follow the Galactic Council's directives while mapping space. And the Council has made it very clear that human space is off-limits." Reed pressed on. "The humans are a young species. What threat could they possibly pose that would justify leaving a hole in our maps?" Mock's large eyes narrowed slightly, the closest thing to emotion Reed had ever seen from the director. "Captain, you are one of our best cartographers. Your work in the Mira Nebula was exemplary, but your curiosity has always been your weakness." Mock pushed a data tablet across the desk. "These are your new mapping assignments. The Outer Rim has plenty of uncharted space that doesn't involve humans." Reed picked up the tablet but didn't look at it. "Has anyone from the Guild ever actually been into human space? Have we even tried to negotiate mapping rights?" "This conversation is over, Captain." Mock returned to his terminal, dismissing Reed without another word. That night, in his personal quarters, Reed couldn't sleep. The blank space on the map haunted him. A true cartographer couldn't just accept an empty zone, especially one so large. It went against everything the Guild stood for. His terminal chimed with an incoming message. The sender was unlisted. "Meet me at the observation deck. Level 7. Now." Reed hesitated, then pulled on his uniform and headed out. The observation deck was empty except for a single figure standing by the massive viewport that looked out onto the stars. Reed recognized her immediately. Dr. Ellis, the Guild's top xenobiologist. Doctor, Reed greeted her. You sent the message. Ellis didn't turn from the viewport. Do you know why I study alien life, Captain? I assume for the same reason I map space. Curiosity. She nodded. Exactly. And right now, my curiosity is very frustrated. She finally turned to face him. I've been denied research access to human biological data for the 5th time. The Council seems very protective of human privacy, Reed said. It's more than that, Ellis replied. Last year, I managed to get a tissue sample from a human trader. Nothing invasive, just a few skin cells. Before I could analyze it, security confiscated my equipment and the sample. I was warned that any further attempts would result in my termination from the Guild. Reed's eyes widened. That seems extreme. It is. And it's not just biology. Their technology, culture, homeworld location, all classified. Ellis lowered her voice. Something isn't right, Captain. Species don't get this level of protection without a reason. What are you suggesting? Reed asked, though he already knew the answer. I'm suggesting we find out for ourselves, Ellis said. I know you've been obsessed with that blank spot on the map. And I know Security Officer Voss owes you a favor after you kept quiet about that incident on Proxima Station. Reed stared out at the stars. What she was suggesting was more than a violation of protocol. It could end their careers, or worse. A small ship, Ellis continued, seeing his hesitation. A quick jump into human space, just far enough to gather some basic data, then back out before anyone notices. Minimal risk, but we finally have some answers. And Voss? Reed asked, already on board with the idea. He can disable the tracking on a survey vessel. We'd be invisible. Reed thought about Director Malk's warning and the strange, heavy secrecy surrounding human space. His entire career had been built on filling in empty spaces on the map. How could he call himself a cartographer if he left this mystery unsolved? When do we leave? Reed asked. Ellis smiled. Tomorrow. The survey ship cartographer is scheduled for routine maintenance. It'll be off the monitoring grid for 8 hours. As Reed looked out at the endless stars, he knew he was about to cross a line from which there might be no return. But some questions demanded answers, no matter the cost. And the biggest question in the galaxy right now was, what were the humans hiding? The cartographer was a small mapping vessel, designed for quick survey missions rather than long journeys. Its cramped cockpit barely fit the 4 crew members as they prepared for the illegal border crossing. Stealth systems active, Security Officer Voss announced. His large 4-fingered hands moved quickly across the control panel. As far as Guild tracking is concerned, this ship is still in Maintenance Bay 3. Navigator Thomas had joined their mission at the last minute. When Reed had told him their plan, Thomas had simply nodded and said, "You'll need someone who can plot a quick escape route." Dr. Ellis checked her equipment one last time. My scanners are ready to collect biological and atmospheric data the moment we cross the border. Reed took a deep breath as he settled into the captain's chair. This is a mapping mission only. We go in, collect basic stellar data, and get out. No contact with humans, if we can avoid it. The others nodded in agreement. Coordinates set for the edge of human space, Thomas said. Ready when you are, Captain. Reed looked at each of his crew members. What they were about to do would likely end their careers if discovered. But the mystery of human space had haunted him for too long. Engage, Reed ordered. The cartographer's engines hummed as the ship moved away from the Guild station. Once they were clear of the immediate sensor range, Thomas activated the jump drive. The stars around them stretched into lines as the ship accelerated beyond light speed toward the forbidden zone. Approaching human space boundary, Thomas announced 3 hours later. Dropping out of FTL in 3, 2, 1. The star lines shrank back into points as the cartographer returned to normal space. Ahead of them was nothing unusual, just stars and empty space. Are we sure this is the right location? Reed asked, checking the coordinates. Positive, Thomas confirmed. We're right at the edge of the restricted zone. Scanning now, Ellis said, activating her equipment. I'm not detecting any defense systems or monitoring stations. Voss frowned at his security console. That's odd. Most species protect their borders with something. Maybe the humans really are as primitive as everyone thinks, Reed suggested. Let's proceed. Thomas, take us in. Slow speed. The cartographer moved forward, crossing the invisible line that marked the boundary of human space. Nothing happened. Well, that was anticlimactic, Ellis said with a nervous laugh. Beginning data collection. Reed activated the ship's mapping systems. Let's chart the nearby star systems first, then we can. A loud alarm suddenly blared through the cockpit. Every screen on the bridge flashed red. What's happening? Reed shouted over the noise. Voss frantically worked his console. Our stealth systems just went offline. All of them, simultaneously. How is that possible? Reed demanded. Those are Guild top-level systems. I don't know, Voss replied. It's like something just switched them off. Thomas pointed at the view screen. Captain, look. Where empty space had been moments before, ships now appeared. Not one or two, but dozens, surrounding the cartographer in a perfect sphere formation. They had seemingly materialized from nowhere. Were they cloaked? Ellis whispered, her eyes wide. No system can cloak that perfectly, Voss said, his voice shaking. Our sensors would have detected something, anything. The ships were unlike any Reed had seen before. They had smooth, dark hulls with strange geometric patterns that seemed to shift and change as he watched. There were no visible engines or weapons, yet they moved with precise coordination. Are they human ships? Reed asked. Before anyone could answer, all the cartographer's systems shut down except for life support and a single communication channel. A message appeared on the main screen. Unauthorized vessel. UAVENTERED restricted space. Maintain position and prepare for boarding. The message was in perfect galactic standard, the common language of all council species. What do we do? Thomas asked, looking to Reed. Reed stared at the message, then at the ships surrounding them. They had no engines, no weapons, and no escape route. We comply, he said finally, and hope they're in a good mood. 20 minutes later, a metallic clank echoed through the ship as something attached to their main airlock. They've docked, Voss reported from the ship's internal sensors, the only system still functioning. The airlock cycled open without any input from the cartographer's crew. 3 figures stepped through. Reed had seen images of humans before, but these 3 didn't match the primitive species described in guild records. They wore sleek, form-fitting uniforms with no insignia or rank markings. Their faces were expressionless as they studied the 4 guild members. The lead human, a tall figure with short dark hair, finally spoke. I am Commander Jackson of the Human Defense Fleet. You have entered sovereign human territory without authorization. The human's galactic standard was perfect, without even a trace of accent. Reed stepped forward. I am Captain Reed of the Galactic Mapping Guild. We are on a peaceful mission to violate explicit boundary treaties between the Galactic Council and human space. Jackson interrupted. Yes, we're aware. Reed faltered. How did you detect us? Our stealth systems. A slight smile appeared on Jackson's face. Were disabled the moment you crossed our border. Technology isn't always what it seems, Captain. The human turned to Ellis, who was clutching her scanner. And you were attempting to collect biological data, Dr. Ellis. Ellis gasped. How do you know my name? The human didn't answer, instead turning to Voss and Thomas. Security Officer Voss and Navigator Thomas, all from the Guild Station Epsilon 9. Reed felt a chill run down his spine. How could you possibly know all this? We've been watching your approach since you left your station, Jackson said simply. Your plan wasn't as secret as you thought. That's impossible, Voss protested. We were under stealth the entire time. The second human, shorter with light-colored hair, spoke for the first time. Your guild technology is cute. Jackson gestured to the airlock. You will come with us to Director Powell at Central Station. Your ship will be towed. And if we refuse? Reed asked, though he knew the question was pointless. The third human, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke. You won't. It wasn't a threat. It was stated as a simple fact. As Reed and his crew were escorted through the airlock and onto the human vessel, he realized with growing dread that they had severely underestimated what they were walking into. The humans weren't the primitive species everyone believed them to be. And that raised a much more troubling question. What else had the Guild gotten wrong about human space? The human station didn't look like a military base. As Reed and his crew were led through wide, bright corridors, they saw gardens, art displays, and what appeared to be normal civilian life. Humans of various heights and colors walked past, giving curious glances to the alien visitors. This isn't what I expected, Ellis whispered to Reed. Commander Jackson, walking ahead of them, turned slightly. What did you expect, Doctor? Prison cells and weapon factories. Ellis flinched at being overheard from several steps away. Reed was beginning to suspect that human hearing was better than reported in Guild records. They arrived at a large door that slid open silently. Inside was a spacious office with a wall-sized window showing a view of stars and a blue-green planet in the distance. A woman stood with her back to them, looking out at the planet. She wore a simple gray uniform with no markings. When she turned, her face was neither friendly nor hostile, just professionally neutral. Welcome to Central Station. I'm Director Powell, she said, gesturing to a round table with chairs. Please, sit. After they were seated, Powell remained standing. You've violated our border, despite clear warnings not to enter human space. Under normal circumstances, this would be considered an act of aggression. Reed started to speak, but Powell held up a hand to stop him. However, we recognize this was an unauthorized Guild mission, driven by curiosity rather than malice. She looked directly at Reed. Captain, your Guild has respected our boundaries for over 50 years. Why choose to violate them now? Reed straightened in his chair. Director, the Galactic Mapping Guild's purpose is to create complete star charts. The blank area in our maps goes against everything we stand for. And this justified breaking interspecies treaties? Powell asked. With respect, Director, these treaties make no sense, Reed argued. Humans are a young species by galactic standards. Your technology shouldn't be advanced enough to warrant this level of secrecy. Powell's expression softened slightly. Ah, you believe we're hiding because we're primitive. She touched a control on her wrist. Let me show you something. The room dimmed, and a holographic display appeared above the table, a map of the galaxy. It was far more detailed than any Guild chart Reed had ever seen. This is our current map of known space, Powell said. Note that we have complete data on all regions, including those the Guild hasn't fully mapped yet. Reed stared in disbelief. That's impossible. Some of these areas haven't been explored by anyone. By the Guild, you mean, Powell corrected. She touched another control, and the map changed. Now the galaxy was divided into colored sections. Nearly half was highlighted in blue. This was human space, approximately 12,000 years ago, Powell said quietly. The 4 Guild members fell silent, trying to process what they were seeing. 12,000 years ago, humans were still living in caves on Earth, Ellis finally said. This can't be right. Earth wasn't our first home, Powell replied. Just our last refuge. 2 hours later, Reed's head was spinning. Director Powell had shown them historical records, archaeological evidence, and technological demonstrations that contradicted everything he thought he knew about human history. Let me understand this, he said slowly. Humans once controlled a vast empire spanning half the galaxy. Then you fought a war with an enemy called the Void, which nearly wiped you out. Correct, Powell confirmed. And to survive, you abandoned your original homeworlds, erased all records of your existence, and somehow made other species forget you ever existed. We used memory alteration technology on a galactic scale, Powell explained. It wasn't perfect, but it worked well enough. Most species have myths about ancient ones or precursors who vanished mysteriously. Those are fragmented memories of us. Ellis shook her head in amazement. But why retreat to Earth? It's not particularly special. That was the point, Powell said. We needed an unremarkable planet where we could rebuild without attracting attention. We erased our advanced technology, our history, everything, and started over. For thousands of years, we lived as primitives while the Void hunted for any trace of us. And now, Thomas asked, has the Void given up? Powell's face darkened. No, it's out there, dormant, but not gone. We advanced our technology again, carefully, until we could detect and monitor Void activity. When we finally returned to space, we established the border around human space and asked the Galactic Council to respect it. But you didn't tell them why, Reed realized. We couldn't risk the information spreading, Powell said. The Void hunts through information networks. It can detect certain patterns, star charts, navigation data, even stories about us. The fewer people who know the truth, the safer everyone is. Voss, who had been quiet until now, leaned forward. With respect, Director, this sounds far-fetched. If you're so advanced, why hide? Why not use your technology to destroy this Void? We tried, Powell said simply. We failed. And trillions died. The room fell silent again. Later, the crew was shown to comfortable quarters. They weren't prisoners, exactly, but they weren't free to leave either. Powell had explained they needed time to decide what to do with the guild members who now knew the truth. I still can't believe it, Thomas said as they gathered in Reed's room. Humans as ancient precursors. It's like finding out your pet is actually your ancestor. Did you see their technology? Ellis was still excited despite the circumstances. They have ships that can bend space without generating energy signatures. They monitored us through our supposedly perfect stealth systems. They're centuries beyond anything the Guild has. Reed sat quietly, thinking about the implications. If Powell was telling the truth, the blank spot on the map wasn't just human privacy. It was protection for the entire galaxy. Voss checked that the door was closed before speaking. I found something while they were bringing us here. He pulled out a small data chip. I managed to download it from an unsecured terminal while the guard was distracted. What is it? Reed asked. I'm not sure yet, Voss said, but it's encrypted with old guild security protocols, which means it was meant for us to find. He inserted the chip into his personal device. After a moment, a video file appeared. The face on the screen was familiar. Director Malk. Reed exclaimed in surprise. The guild director's gray face looked directly at them from the recording. If you're watching this, you've ignored my warnings and entered human space. What you're about to learn will change everything you thought you knew about the galaxy and put you in grave danger. The humans aren't our enemies. They're our guardians, and they've just run out of time. The recording ended, leaving the 4 guild members staring at each other in shock. Whatever they had stumbled into was far bigger than a simple mapping expedition. And somehow, Director Malk was involved. What does he mean, run out of time? Ellis asked, her voice tight with worry. Before anyone could answer, alarms blared throughout the station. Red emergency lights flashed in the corridors outside their quarters. The doors slid open and Commander Jackson appeared, his calm demeanor replaced by urgent focus. Come with me. Now. What's happening? Reed asked as they hurried after Jackson through the suddenly busy corridors. Humans were rushing in all directions, some in uniforms, others in civilian clothes. Your ship, Jackson replied without slowing down. Its scanning equipment triggered something we've been dreading for centuries. They entered a large circular room filled with screens and control stations. Director Powell stood in the center, surrounded by officers reporting status updates. The atmosphere was tense but controlled. These people had trained for this moment. Powell looked up as they entered. "Captain Reed, it seems your mapping mission may have doomed us all." "I don't understand," Reed said. Powell gestured to a large screen showing the cartographer. "Your scanning equipment uses a very specific frequency pattern to collect stellar data. That pattern is recognizable." "Recognizable to what?" Ellis asked. "The void." Powell's face was grim. "Your scans created ripples in subspace that match old human technology, like a beacon announcing our continued existence." Another screen showed a distant region of space where something impossible was happening. Stars were disappearing, one by one, as if being swallowed by a moving shadow. "What is that?" Thomas whispered. "The Void's advanced scouts," Powell said. "They've awakened and are moving toward human space." Jackson led them to a side console where Director Mock's face appeared on a small screen. The guild director looked surprisingly calm given the circumstances. "Director Mock," Reed began, "you knew about all this." "Some guild leaders have known the truth about humans for generations," Mock admitted. "It was necessary for coordination." "Coordination of what?" Voss demanded. "The defense of the galaxy," Mock said simply. "Humans aren't the only ones who have been preparing. They just lead the effort." Powell touched a control, and the central display changed to show a vast network of strange devices positioned throughout the galaxy. "Early warning systems," she explained, "placed near every major civilization, but hidden from public knowledge." "We've been monitoring for void activity for thousands of years," Jackson added. "Until today, there were only minor incidents easily contained." Reed watched in amazement as the station around them began to transform. Walls shifted and reconfigured. What had appeared to be decorative elements folded out into complex equipment. The entire station was changing like a puzzle box being solved. "How is this possible?" Ellis breathed. "Quantum architecture," Powell said. "The station exists in multiple configurations simultaneously until needed." A new alarm sounded, and a technician called out, "Director, multiple emergence points detected. They're coming faster than predicted." Powell turned to Mock's screen. "Alert the Council. Activate Protocol Omega-7. Mock nodded and disappeared from the screen. "What's happening now?" Reed asked. "The real human fleet is being deployed," Jackson explained as he led them to a viewing window. Outside, space itself seemed to ripple. Where there had been empty void moments before, massive ships now appeared. Not dozens, but thousands. Their designs were unlike the smaller vessels that had intercepted the cartographer. These were clearly warships, bristling with technology Reed couldn't even begin to comprehend. "This is impossible," Voss said. "A fleet this size couldn't be hidden." "It wasn't hidden," Powell corrected. "It existed in a parallel phase state. Neither here nor elsewhere until needed." Reed struggled to process what he was seeing. "How many ships do you have?" "Enough, we hope," Powell said. Her wrist communicator chimed, and she answered it. After a brief conversation, she turned to the guild members with a serious expression. "We've contained the initial scout vessels, but the main void force is accelerating toward us. We need to know exactly what scanning equipment you used and how long it was active." Ellis stepped forward. "I can help with that. I designed some of the biological scanning systems myself." Powell nodded. "Good. Come with me." As Ellis left with Powell, Reed, Thomas, and Voss were directed to a side room with better viewing windows. From there, they could see the human fleet organizing into complex formations. "I still don't understand what this void actually is," Reed said to Jackson, who had stayed with them. "We don't fully understand it ourselves," Jackson admitted. "It's not a species as you would recognize one. It's something from between spaces. It consumes information, energy, and eventually entire star systems." "Why does it hunt humans specifically?" Thomas asked. Because we fought it, Jackson said. Thousands of years ago, we expanded too far, too fast. Our empire stretched across half the galaxy. We accidentally awakened the void when our ships entered certain regions of subspace. At first, we thought we could fight it conventionally. What happened? Reed asked, though he suspected the answer. We lost. Badly. Billions died as entire systems were consumed. In desperation, we tried to erase ourselves from existence, destroying our own records, our maps, even altering the memories of other species so they wouldn't remember us. We retreated to Earth and started over, hoping the void would think us extinct. A flash of light outside the window caught their attention. Several human ships had engaged an invisible enemy, firing weapons that seemed to tear holes in space itself. All this time, Voss said slowly, the humans weren't hiding because they were weak. We were hiding because we knew what would happen if we were found again, Jackson finished. And now, because of your mapping mission, the galaxy will face what we hoped to contain forever. Reed felt the weight of guilt crushing down on him. His obsession with filling in the blank spot on the map had awakened an ancient horror. He watched as more human ships moved into battle positions, their weapons charging for a fight against an enemy he still couldn't see. What can we do to help? He asked finally. Jackson looked at him for a long moment. Pray that we're stronger now than we were 12,000 years ago. On the distant edge of human space, the darkness between stars began to move with purpose. 3 days had passed since the first Void Scouts appeared. Reed stood beside Director Powell on the command deck of the human flagship, the Defender. Through the massive view screen, he watched as hundreds of human ships engaged with the darkness that seemed to eat the very light around it. Your weapons are actually working against it, Reed observed, amazed. Last time, you said you couldn't defeat the void. Last time, we fought alone, Powell replied. She gestured to a part of the display showing ships of various designs. These are vessels from 17 species, all built using technology we secretly shared through the Guild over centuries. Reed recognized Guild designs among them. The Guild has been building ships for you. Not for us, Powell corrected. With us. Your Director Malk is one of our strongest allies. As if summoned by his name, Malk appeared on a side screen. His normally emotionless face showed signs of strain. The Galactic Council has been informed of the situation, Malk reported. They're in shock, but mobilizing. The truth about human space is spreading quickly across all civilized worlds. Too quickly, Powell said with concern. The void feeds on information patterns. The more species learn about humans, the stronger the signal becomes. On another screen, Dr. Ellis was working with human scientists, analyzing data from Reed's mapping equipment. She looked up briefly and called out, "We've isolated the frequency pattern that triggered the awakening. It's the standard Guild cartography pulse, but something about your specific calibration created a resonance that matched ancient human technology. Can we use that to our advantage?" Reed asked. Jackson, who had been coordinating the fleet movements, turned to them. We might. If we can create a similar pulse but invert the pattern, we could disrupt the void's cohesion. It wouldn't destroy it, but it might force it to retreat. Like sound waves canceling each other out, Thomas suggested. Exactly, Ellis agreed. But we'd need a delivery system that could get close enough without being consumed. The battle outside intensified. A group of void tendrils had broken through the defensive line and was moving toward the flagship. Ships moved to intercept, firing weapons that bent space itself. We need a small, fast vessel, Jackson said. Something that can slip through the chaos and get close to the void's central mass. Everyone on the command deck turned to look at the same display, showing the cartographer, still docked at the station. No, Reed said, understanding immediately. My ship doesn't have the speed or defenses for that kind of mission. But it has the exact scanning system that awakened the void, Powell pointed out. We can modify it to emit the inverted pulse. The ship would need to be piloted manually, Jackson added. on a direct course through the void's outer layers. A suicide mission, Voss said bluntly. The room fell silent. Reed looked at his crew, Ellis, Thomas, and Voss. They had come on this journey because of his obsession with filling in the blank spaces on the map. Now the fate of the galaxy might depend on one final mapping mission. "I'll do it," Reed said quietly. "This was my mistake. I'll fix it." "Captain," Thomas began to object. "No," Reed cut him off. "I drag you all into this. I'm not risking anyone else." Powell studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Commander Jackson will help you prepare the ship." 6 hours later, Reed sat alone in the cartographer's cockpit. The small ship had been modified with human technology that Ellis assured him would protect the vessel long enough to reach its target. The scanner that had inadvertently awakened the void had been reconfigured to emit the inverted pulse. "All systems ready," Reed reported over the comm. "Preparing for launch." Director Powell's voice came through clearly. "The fleet will create an opening for you. You'll have approximately 2 minutes to reach the target zone." "Understood." Reed checked the coordinates one final time. "Captain Reed," Mock's voice joined the channel. "The Guild owes you a debt that can never be repaid. Just make sure the new galactic maps show human space properly," Reed replied. "No more blank spots." "That is a promise," Mock said solemnly. As the cartographer detached from the station, Reed saw his crew watching from the command deck view screen. Ellis gave him a tearful smile. Thomas nodded respectfully. Voss raised his hand in a solemn salute. "Course laid in," Reed announced. "Beginning approach." The small ship accelerated toward the battle. Ahead, the human fleet was executing a complex maneuver, drawing the void's tendrils away from a central point, creating a narrow corridor. "Opening confirmed," Jackson's voice reported. "You have your window, Captain. Godspeed." Reed pushed the engines to maximum. The cartographer shot forward, straight toward the darkness that consumed light itself. Around him, massive ships exchanged fire with an enemy he could barely comprehend. As he neared the void, Reed saw it clearly for the first time. Not just darkness, but a shimmering absence, like reality being unwritten. Ships that got too close simply ceased to exist, not destroyed but erased. 30 seconds to target zone," Reed announced, his voice steady despite his fear. The cartographer began to shake as it entered the void's outer field. Warning lights flashed across the control panel. Hull integrity was failing. 20 seconds. Outside, space itself seemed to tear and ripple. Through the gaps, Reed caught impossible glimpses of other realities, other universes being consumed. 10 seconds. The ship's systems began to fail one by one. The view screen flickered and died, leaving Reed flying blind. 5 seconds. With his final act as a cartographer, Reed activated the inverted pulse. The scanner that had been designed to map stars now fired its beam into the heart of the void. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a shockwave of pure white light exploded outward from the point of impact. The void's darkness recoiled like a living thing in pain. On the command deck of the Defender, everyone watched in stunned silence as the void began to retreat. Its tendrils pulled back from the human fleet, curling inward as if wounded. "It's working," Ellis whispered. "The pulse is disrupting its cohesion." "What about Reed?" Thomas asked, searching the displays for any sign of the cartographer. No one answered. As the void continued its retreat, a final transmission came through, broken and distorted. "This is Captain Reed. I can see. It's beautiful. I understand now. The map never ends." Then silence. The battle was over. The void had withdrawn to the dark space between galaxies, wounded but not destroyed. In the days that followed, the truth about human space spread throughout the galaxy. The humans revealed themselves fully to the Galactic Council, not as a young species, but as ancient guardians who had sacrificed their history to protect everyone. 1 month later, Ellis, Thomas, and Voss stood in the Guild's Great Hall as Director Malk unveiled the new official galactic map. Human space was no longer a blank spot, but detailed with thousands of stars and systems. And at the edge of the map, where the void had first appeared, a small notation read, "Reed's Passage," named for the cartographer who taught us that some boundaries exist not to hide what lies beyond, but to protect what lies within. The galaxy would never again forget that the map stopped at human space for a reason.